Apologies to anyone who was on the first live that I just did 15 minutes ago. The sound was completely screwed up. It sounded terrible. My apologies. All right. So if you're in this new live, take two, where I'm going to talk today about can I really homeschool my children? Let me know in the comments below if you're hearing me. This is coming through properly. All right. Let's give it a take two. So, hello. My apologies for that. So glad somebody told me after I deleted it, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is ridiculous. Tech support. So I want to share from my heart today about something that a lot of homeschool moms deal with, but we don't really talk about. It's our fear that we're screwing up our kids educationally, and we can live with that for years and have this doubt in the back of our mind thinking, I'm going to screw them all up. I am totally not going to find out until it's too late. And we can put a ton of pressure on ourselves. I know I did, because when I was a first time mom, homeschool mom, I'd never even heard about homeschooling. I honestly heard about it for the first time at Bible college. I was a pretty new Christian, and it's like another student who's only 18. I was like 25, married, so kind of a big sister feel. She's telling me, kind of like a little bit about herself, where she's from and how she homeschooled. And I thought she was pulling my leg. I honestly thought it was a joke, because I've heard about, uh, public school, French school, Catholic school, all these different kinds of school where I grew up in Canada. I'd even heard about, different academies and stuff, but I had never ever heard the word homeschool. I mean, I knew a couple of kids who maybe stopped going to school because they had like a health reason going on, but I didn't really think of that as a official homeschool. I'd never met a homeschooler in my life. No kidding. However, as I began to get to know some other homeschoolers over my years at Bible college and traveling around a little bit in the world and becoming a mom, I noticed there was something remarkable about homeschoolers that kind of had in common, even though they were very different people, and there's always an exception to the rule. They seemed to have this quality that bound them together. They were more confident people. They were more comfortable in their own skin. They held conversation with people of all kinds of different ages. They just seemed like a people set apart, very different. And I was intrigued, though I was also scared. Well, fast forward a couple of years, I'm a new mom, got 4 kids under 4, and we decided we were going to homeschool. Another story for another time how we came to that decision. And I felt so super unqualified. Not only had never heard about homeschooling, I had never seen homeschooling. And this was an experiment that I would be running on my children. And I wouldn't really find out until it was too late, right? Until they were graduated from high school and this entire season of life preparation was over. So just a little pressure to do a good job. So here's the deal. Turns out that I'm not the only one who thinks these thoughts, especially at the beginning of a homeschool journey. Even if like you yourself were a homeschooler or new homeschoolers, there, there's always been for me this sort of voice in the back of my head accusing me with these doubts and saying, are you sure? Are you sure? Are you really sure that you can do this? Are you sure that you're qualified? You're not doing it, not even following the provincial guidelines, Tara. How do you know this is going to work out? And that would kind of eat me up inside. And even though I kept putting one foot in front of the other by faith, not by sight, I would live with this heaviness of never really knowing how this was going to work out. Because, of course, no one has a crystal ball. But this was heavier than just the general unknown in the future. This was like, has the flavor of you're screwing up your kids. There's a lot of things I will do to myself and I will put up with and risks I'll take from myself. But risking my children and their well being and their future welfare, their lives, that's serious. So, now that I'm a little bit further ahead in the life journey, the homeschool mom, big family mom journey that I am on, I've got a little bit of more perspective that I did not have at the beginning. That I wish, like, if I could go back in time and talk to myself now, here's a couple of things that I would have said at the beginning, right? So I'm going to share that with you. So if you're struggling with thinking about homeschooling or in the early years of homeschooling, or you're even just, considering it, then here's some encouragement that I wish I had had at the beginning. Would have really brought down my stress. First of all, comparison is the thief of joy. Have you heard that one? Comparison is the thief of joy. And I was robbing myself of joy, just a daily quiet joy and confidence, because I kept comparing myself to an almost incomparable standard. People will come up, and this happens very frequently for people who homeschool. They'll be asked, Oh, so do you follow the state or provincial guidelines? Or are you just like following literally the public school and just doing it at home? Like, no. Homeschool isn't like doing public school at home where I have like a little bell and we start at the same time and we do exactly the same like you can. Most homeschoolers don't. They have different reasons, they have a different approach. It's actually a very different approach and it's got tons of flexibility and variability in it. And there are always, of course, exceptions to the rule where you meet one family, you're like, wow, you guys are kind of a disaster. But most homeschoolers are really dedicated people, very devoted to their own children, are learners, are just like a different kind of people, even though there's a lot of, different people who homeschool for different reasons in different ways. They tend to be people though who are really, really devoted to their children's well-being. At the same time, struggling with self doubt because they don't have a lot of outside affirmation. We're not necessarily following the provincial guideline. I live in Ontario, up in Canada, so I don't necessarily have that feedback where I'm just checking off the standardized tests telling me that I'm doing a good job. I don't do report cards with my children. So I don't actually know, you know, based on their guidelines how I'm doing. I have to evaluate progress and success in a totally different way. So if I only compared myself to one standard, one way, I'm setting myself up for constant doubt, constantly beating myself up because I might not even be teaching multiplication at the same time as, my local school board. But does that mean I'm doing it all wrong? So I let go of comparison and comparing myself to something that literally doesn't compare. So that really helped right there. It took me a while to get there because I didn't realize how much I was doing it to myself. So if I can help you, shave off that learning curve and reduce your stress, then if that's the one thing you take out of today's live, God bless you. I wish someone had told me. Second is this: academics is only part of life preparation. There's more to life than just your academics. So they have their place. I honestly am a firm believer in having, a good grounding in basic math, basic reading, basic writing, because those are door openers anywhere you go in the world. So I'm not in any way saying no education doesn't even matter. It has its place though, and it's almost like keeping it in perspective. Because I think homeschoolers, I know for myself, can sometimes make more of it. Now, if our kids aren't tracking with exactly what the other kids are doing in their peer group or in like the local, state, provincial guidelines or whatever, we think, oh no, they're falling behind. Again, who says? It's kind of an arbitrary measurement because, my one of the beauties of homeschooling is you can move at your own pace. Well, if your kids are moving fast, you're like, hey, sweet. What if they're not going as quickly? Then you can beat yourself up. I know I do. I was always creating for myself this arbitrary gauge, and there was no one there to tell me I was right or wrong. So I erred on the side of caution and told myself I was doing it all wrong. Because I don't want to fluff myself up and say, you're doing a great job. And I'm almost like naively ignorant. It's easier for me to beat myself up and assume the worst. However, when I began to see that academics were only part of life preparation, it really reduced my stress and pressure. And what I mean is this: if two people walk into a social scenario, let's say like a job application scenario, and one person comes in and they've got the resume, they've got all of the things ticked off or like being super qualified for this position, but they make no eye contact, no smile, no handshake, no pleasant chit chat with the interviewer. That's going to factor into it. But then applicant B, they've got a resume, maybe probably the same resume, maybe a little different of a homeschool resume, right? They did it in a different way. They're qualified, but you know what sets them apart? They've got people skills because they come in with a smile on their face, genuine one, right? Eye contact, a nice, comfortable handshake, make a little bit of pleasant small talk, and then get into the interview. Who do you think is going to stand out in that situation? And it has nothing to do with their academics. We all know it, right? I've had doctors who've attended to my many C-sections. My 10th one is coming up in a few weeks. And I've had doctors attend to me who had no bedside manner whatsoever. Honestly, like they are super smart and they can do a C-section probably with their eyes closed. Well, keep their eyes open, please. But they have no bedside manner. These people are unpleasant to be around. I wouldn't even want to be friends with them. They're so unpleasant, right? Maybe they're just having a bad day, but ugh. And then there's my OB. I love her. She has it all. She's the whole package. Professional, high, like she teaches the other OBs at the hospital group I'm part of, and she has got people skills. She smiles, she makes eye contact. She'll ask you how you're really doing and actually care and take time to listen. She doesn't treat me like I'm a petri dish. She teaches me like a person. That kind of stuff sets people apart in this world. So academics have their place, but there's more to life than academics, like character development, people skills, right? Actually being an enjoyable person to be around. That is going to open up not just professional doors, but relationships, which at the end of your life, what matters the most, right? Was it your academic achievements or was it the relationships you had? The people that you loved and loved you back, the relationships you build, those really are what matters, speaking from a human perspective in the end. So there's that. Lastly, I have learned to give myself a little bit of grace through seasons that require some flex. I've actually learned how to develop a routine that isn't so strict that I'm always falling behind if I'm not following it like check mark, check mark, check mark. I have a baby every 2 years. And, life happens where there might be a crisis or there's a home reno happening because I'm married to a handyman. There's always a reno happening at our house. There may be setbacks where it's not going exactly as I planned, or I just have to adjust for the season of having a C-section, a newborn baby for a couple of months. If I expect myself to keep it all going at like, fourth gear, like to use a metaphor of like driving really fast, like 80 kilometers. What would that be? I can't even think in American numbers sometimes, though we've lived there for years. Just going really fast on the highway. If I try to keep highway speed academically through certain seasons of life, not only am I going to stress myself out, just period, like physically burn myself out, I'm also going to stress myself out emotionally thinking, oh no, I'm not doing it right. The kids are falling behind. The kids are falling behind. And their whole life is going to be ruined as a result of me with this stupid homeschool experiment. I should have just put them in a different form of education that maybe I'm actually not comfortable with. So, what has super helped me is a little bit of grace. Again, it's an arbitrary, humanly made up standard to follow everyone else's path. Just because a lot of people do the public education route doesn't mean that's the only way to prepare for life, academically or personally. There can be seasons of life when you just have to step back a little bit for health reasons, for personal reasons. And I have just learned it's okay. It really does work out in the wash. If I'm doing multiplication for one kid at age 8, but I'm doing it, more like at age 10 for someone else, it all works out in the wash. By the time they hit 18, 20 and they launch into their adult lives, no one is going to be saying, now, when did you learn how to do long division, sir? As there are a couple of markers that we're going to be looking for as they do begin to launch out of high school and into what's on their heart for their adult lives, which may or may not involve higher academics. They'll be prepared. I'm A, trusting God ultimately, and B, taking a little bit of unrealistic pressure off my shoulders of things that I am not humanly capable of knowing or accomplishing. Ultimately, it's a walk of surrender and trust and also being faithful one day at a time. Stopping comparing, realizing academics aren't everything, and giving myself some grace through seasons of life that require flexibility, just like I would with a friend. If she's like, Tara, I'm going through something, I'd be like, then go through it, back off for a couple months, you'll be okay. Well, I know that now because I've been homeschooling for a couple of years, but I wasn't at the beginning. Somebody just wandered in. So I hope this has encouraged you. And if you would like more encouragement and you're like, Tara, keep talking, you know what I'm going through, you've been there, feel free to jump into the group that I've linked in today's video. It's my Big Family Moms group, private members only group. And in that group, I share a lot more free training and resources. I'm very active in the group, and I would love to come alongside you, Big Family Mama, where the kids outnumber the parents, to encourage you overcoming struggles, whether they're homeschool related or just life, so you can grow in God's grace and be more equipped as a parent. So there's that. Thank you so much for joining me today. This has been such a joy to share from my life and my heart. Let me know in the comments below. Are you struggling with homeschooling, with feeling like you're not going to do a good job? If anything has resonated with you, I'd love to, interface with you in the comments or in the group. You're more than welcome to pop over and see if it's a good fit for you. God bless you today, and I will see you on